The series of shows that I'm doing here at the Leith Burbank Center for the Arts, called River, Ocean, Sky, began as my response to the fires in 2017. And as I thought about it more and more, I realized that what brings life to our county landscapes and what helps bring life back in the rebirth of the landscapes is water. And so I became interested to think of water more as the life-giving force that flows through the landscapes in the rivers. The first show I did was called Leaves and Branches, and it flows through all the trees and the roots and the branches. So this one is more devoted to the water. I'll share with you 5 aspects of painting the rivers and the water. And the first one I'm calling color or color field. This is a painting by Richard Diebenkorn, the abstract painter. It was done in the 1970s when I was in art school and living in Los Angeles. I had moved to Los Angeles from New York, and in Santa Monica, I would go to the cliffs and look out at this broad expanse of the Pacific Ocean. And this is from Diebenkorn's Ocean Park series, and it had a big impact on me. When I was at UCLA, I got a Ford Foundation travel grant. And with that $900, basically spent all the money on a ticket to Tahiti. And then my grandmother gave me $100. And I did what's known as plein air painting, painting from life. And I had a little kit, and I would go around and paint the landscapes in Tahiti. This is a scene of me painting a landscape in Bora Bora. This is one of the little paintings that resulted from that. It's 8 by 10 inches. You can even see the sand that was blowing from the beach onto the painting. I was absolutely amazed at the color. I had never experienced color in these tropical waters, and how the water, the clear water with the tropical sun going through the water and hitting the white sand underneath was so bright in contrast to the deep blue sky. I tried to be as accurate as possible, but it's also, I guess, what you might think of as something abstract. This is a Richard Diebenkorn painting, also painted in 1979. Very similar colors, and there again, like a young 20-something responding to the open plains of the water of Santa Monica Bay or the South Pacific. His Ocean Park series captured that sense of color. So for me, the first aspect of painting water is to respond to the color, and it's these great plains of color. This is a painting I did in graduate school of Santa Monica Bay. Topanga Beach on the upper left is Palos Verdes Peninsula, and Catalina upper right. There again, it's very much influenced by Diebenkorn and the big field of color. This is once I moved up to the Russian River, and once again, it's very much about the color of the water more than any other aspect. This is in autumn when the leaves are starting to go a little golden. This is the painting over here on your left, your right, my left, which is the river cliff, which is north of Cloverdale and south of Popland. And in many ways, what I like most about the water in this piece is the shift of very shallow water in the foreground right, where you're looking through it and seeing the color of the wet sand just inches beneath the surface and a little bit of sky reflected, and then it drops off into this beautiful turquoise gray green. So this painting is much about color. This is me doing a study for it. I'll go on. So I'll do a small color study, but then work on the larger piece in the studio. You can see it's so large I'm actually stepping on an apple box. The second aspect of painting water is very obvious in a way. It's the idea that the water is a mirror. This is a painting that I did several years ago. It's in a private collection now, and it's actually very close to the one on the far left. It's near Camp Rose outside of Healdsburg. And of course, when the water is very smooth and glassy, it's just like a mirror. One of the few things that's different in the water plane, because it is a plane, is that it generally is a little darker. So that's one thing to look for. It's just you've got maybe a mirrored reflection, but it's a little bit darker, maybe because you're seeing through a little bit. This is an old painting, not mine, by John Frederick Kensett in the 1800s, one of my favorite painters. It's of Lake George, upstate New York. And here he's got more of a traditional approach to the mirror, which is a very soft look. He also, in his later work, got into more of a hard edge, very abstract kind of composition. This is probably the 1870s. But Kensett work was influential on me as well when I started learning more about the Hudson River School. So this is the painting on the far left view on the wall, which is Camp Rose, just outside of Healdsburg, with the morning light coming up to the left and the shadow of the trees being cast across the gravel bar, and then the reflecting, and of course you've got that exact mirror. It's a little out of focus. A close-up on it. And the mirror effect, once again, I guess that looks pretty focused. And as you zoom in closer and closer, you can see somebody asked me when I'm looking at a painting or doing a painting, what am I seeing? And I think when you get close to my paintings, then you see what I'm seeing when I'm painting them, because I'm at about arm's length. And one thing that's going on here is that the mirror also softens the image by breaking it up a little bit. Maybe some of the image is going into the surface of the water. And so I've captured that between the hard edge trees that are the real thing and the mirrored image, which has become softened. And this is a really close-up view where it's funny, some people say, well, your paintings are just like photographs. But this really isn't what a photograph captures. It's this is my interpretation of a reflection. This is one of the things interesting about the mirror too is that you're looking down to the surface of the water, but if your eye were to be on the level of the water, looking up, you're looking underneath the tree as it's across the sky. So it's an upside version of that. This is a Monet water lily painting, and if you notice his trees at the top, you're looking down to the water, then back up, and if you were to turn your head upside down, that's the sky above the trees, and that's another aspect of the mirror. This is an amazing painting by Vincent van Gogh, and it's a Starry Night on the Rhone River. And another aspect of what the mirror or the water can do, as a special kind of mirror, it can stretch the lights. So the lights around the harbor have been stretched down. And in that painting on the left, I've done a little bit of that stretching too. Where on the far left particularly, it's been blurred and stretched as it comes towards you. Ripples are a big part of painting water. The surface of water is it's such an amazing thing because it's flexible. And with the slightest amount of wind, it can bend and chop up the image into fragments. And what's interesting too is that the same wind that's moving and undulating the surface of the water is the same wind, and it's this painting way over in the far corner there, which is the Russian River, and I call this one Gentle Wind Rising Autumn on the River, because when you live on the river and look at it carefully, you get to know its moods, and something as subtle as a gentle wind rising can change the mood of the trees and the sky, and the water itself goes from being glassy to suddenly rippling and changing its shape. And this is a detail of that painting over there, showing how you've got shapes and pieces and fragments of the sky, of the clouds, of the trees, and of the background mountains that have been turned upside down, but then reshaped into something completely new. And I think that transformation is something that's an amazing thing for different artists to look at and interpret. I think it was first really captured by the French Impressionists. This was around 1851. This is a Monet painting, and of course, the way he's broken up the water into the strokes is one of the great achievements or steps in the history of painting. One of the things I've always found fascinating about this particular one is how you'll see like a black oval with a white oval on the inside of it, particularly on the left. And I think there's something very scientific about this. And I think Monet was definitely a very astute observer of nature and scientific in a way of his analysis. In comparison, it's the same scene by Renoir. And it's a lot looser and less optical in its capturing of the moving water underneath the pier and the bridge and all that. If you look to the left, the two painters were painting side by side. This is another Monet, and his style is more distinct. I think he's more definite, but also more scientific in how the water undulating broke up the people standing on the bridge. Another Renoir. There's some ducks in the lower right. Now Renoir can get really loose with his expression of water. Again, comparing that to Monet, Monet was more systematic, and it's Monet and most of the Impressionists used a brush that was flat or square on the end. So when you look at their strokes, they're like little blocks or little rectangles, and they're pretty regular. And I think this is one way that Monet approached the image, was to break it down into these, they call them taches in French, or touches. What do I have next? Anybody guess who this artist might be? David Hockney is a contemporary British-American painter who was one of my teachers at UCLA. He was fascinated with swimming pools, also in the 1970s. And he's very adroit at creating marks and patterns to express different things. And so I think this expression of the motion of water, not through dots or dashes or brush marks so much as these little curving lines, it captures the movement of water. This is an amazing piece done in the 18th century in Japan by, I think, Ogaro Kone or some artist that I was not familiar with, but he has expressed the movement of water through these beautiful calligraphic swirls. This is Pete Mondrian, one of the great painters of the 20th century. Before he went totally abstract and did pieces like Broadway Boogie Woogie, this is called View from the Dunes, looking out over the North Sea. And he's broken up the patterns of water once again into repetitive lines. This is a close-up of that piece over there to the far corner, which is Saucil Creek. It's near Jimtown in the Alexander Valley. And that foreground that's very soft and dark does have a series of paint strokes that capture the movement of water in those ripples. So that the dark lines would be the side of the ripple facing us, that more or less you're looking down into the dark water, and the light rest of it is more like the mirrored surface reflecting the sky. And there's the whole painting. The fourth aspect I wanted to share with you is that looking at water can be like looking into a window. And that's particularly evident with the rock and the clear water painting here. What I wanted to capture was the contrast between the opacity of the rock, which is painted with a lot of texture and density, and the translucency of the water, or the transparency of it. You can see here, it doesn't quite capture the colors there, but you do have a little interesting reflection when I was talking about looking down at the water and then looking up under the tree. That's what you see here in the dark shadow above. You're actually looking down, and then it's as if your eye was on the water, looking up at the backlit rock against the brighter sky. Another David Hockney. In this window into the water, a very famous painting, one thing that tells you that you're looking into water is the fact that it's framed by the concrete, as well as the little undulating line against the wall. There's the close-up. Once again, the stylization of the light passing through the surface. You don't actually see the surface, you just see it on the bottom of the pool and on the man's back. This is a detail from a painting by M.C. Escher, or a lithograph etching, called The Three Worlds. And here he defines the clarity of the water by seeing the koi or the carp under the surface upon which the leaves are resting. They are defining the surface, and the top shows the reflected trees that you're looking up at from the surface. Here's the whole piece. Another way to define the surface of the clear window of water, this is by Jennifer Bartlett, American contemporary painter, is the beach balls floating on the surface of the pool. It's got the frame, but they've got these beach balls. And then what you're looking at, the patterns underneath, I assume, are her stylization of the light passing through the water onto the bottom. In contrast to that is a 19th century painting by Sir John Everett Millais called Ophelia. It's an oil painting depicting the Shakespearean heroine Ophelia, who's gone mad and she falls into a river. In a way like the Escher and the Jennifer Bartlett, the surface of the water is defined, because you don't really see much of the water. It's defined by the flowers that are floating, and her dress is floating. And if you see the real painting, her red hair is floating on the surface of the water. And then lower left, you get some interesting reflections looking up underneath the reeds. This is a painting that I did a few years back. This is the one I actually called Ripples and Reflections. Anyway, for me, I used it to define the surface plane of the clear water. And finally, sparkles. I don't have any sparkly water paintings here tonight, but I have done them. When I lived in New York, I went up to a place called Fawn's Leap. It was a famous location for the Hudson River School up in the Catskills. I was actually standing not only on the edge of this river, the Catskill River, but I was standing at the top of that waterfall, about 3 feet from the edge, because I wanted that downward view. This was my setup. The easel was literally in the little bit of water there. And this is the final painting that was done, with the water at my feet just swirling and then falling down into the chasm. I realized with this painting that the sparkles of water really define the surface and bring it to life. So I wanted to zoom in a little bit on that for you. Blown up many times. But the sparkles, each of them is a little miniature sun. So as the water is kind of pulled, it's like a liquid mirror. As the water is pulled in these strands, each of the ripples is bending and catching bits of the sun, which is generally just a small thing in the sky. And they're all, as the ripples change position, they turn off and on. So you get a flickering effect. It's pretty complex, and it can be hypnotic if you ever sit and just look at water reflecting light. Another even closer view. Now, I did another commission for the public library that I went to as a child, Bayshore Brightwaters on Long Island. And this is a super close-up of a painting of the Great South Bay off of Long Island, New York. And there again, I realized that without these little sparkles, there was no other way to get the sense of the light on the complex surface of the sea, or the Great South Bay. So this is as we pull back from that detail. And this is the whole painting. So this is now in the library where I got my first art books. It's kind of cool. A friend of mine used to do a clam boat. There's ferry boats and sailboats. When there are so many dots of light or sparkles, points of light, they begin to come together and merge into this glow. And that was something that when I lived in Marin and would go up on the Mount Tam and look out over the ocean over Stimson Beach, it amazed me. And I did a painting of that that will be in a coming show. It looks a little softer than it actually is, but you've got so much light here, and you've actually got, instead of ripples, you have big waves coming in to Stimson Beach. So this is, as I said, a painting that'll be in a future show. And that's it.